was early in the morning and the engines were just waking up. However, there was a visitor to Tidmouth Sheds, a visitor whom they hadn't seen in a while. Toby was the first to inquire. "Oh, good morning, Paxton," said Toby. "What are you doing here?" "Paxton," said Percy. "It's been a while since we've seen you. It's been ages, really." "That is true," said Thomas. "What happened? The other engines told me about the things you were doing before the ffarquar explosion, and I never saw you leading up to it, during it, or after it. Where were you?" It was clear that Paxton had a lot on his mind. So, he took a deep breath. "All right, I'll tell you all." And he began his story. It all begins just as Percy, Duck, and Edward ventured into the diesel works. At the same time Duck, Percy, and Edward were trapped in the diesel works, Scruffy and I were off doing our own thing. We decided we would search the island and look for clues, just in case our diesel works theory proved false. However, things kind of took a turn for the worst. On that fateful Monday morning, we too discovered that the island had been rigged with explosives, so we decided we would do the best that we could to dismantle them. However, I knew I would eventually have to search the diesel works, so I parked Scruffy in a siding at Knapford and said my goodbye. "Stay safe, Scruffy," I told him. "I'll be back for you soon. I'm just going to search the diesel works. Perhaps Edward, Percy, and Duck are in there as well." "Good luck," Scruffy told me, and I raced away. However, I couldn't help but feel like I'd find something other than clues there. It was there I met Diesel, perched high above a flatbed. He asked me many questions about what was going on, to which I answered them, however coldly, as I was still very angry at him at the time. I soon left. I then returned to Scruffy in order to take him out of the siding. However, that's when he noticed something. There was a line of explosive cargo sitting on the line across the yard. I knew I had to do something. I then buffered up to the cars as quickly as I could. And then something rather regrettable happened with another certain diesel engine. "Oh yeah, that's right," said Sonny, who had now shown up. "My crew tried to put me back on the rails as that was happening, but they were too exhausted, and although I was almost put back on, I ended up falling over again. I think the Fat Controller was nearby too, watching and surveilling. My crew were so exhausted I had no chance of being put back on the rails. They tried and tried, but I must have fallen off at least once or twice. Ended up on both sides of the track at one point too, I think. I don't know, it was all kind of a blur." "Wait a minute," said Percy. "We were in Knapford Yard turning around and stuff. How come we didn't see Paxton?" "It's just as Sonny just said," said Thomas. "A blur. And not only that, but the yard was riddled with explosives. So, chances are we wouldn't have seen him anyway." "And what's even crazier," continued Paxton, "is the fact that both Scruffy and I, and other engines, managed to get rid of some explosives. However, the diesels managed to put some back." "So that's why the explosives were moved around," said Henry. "Yeah, that's why a few of them were moved around anyway." "This still doesn't explain why you weren't at ffarquar or anywhere else," said Thomas. "I'm getting to that," said Paxton. By this point, Scruffy and I were kind of stuck. Diesel was dead on the turntable with Thomas overturned and Diesel 10 in the middle, and the Mayflower Bridge was out. So we didn't know where to go or what to do. And to make matters worse, some of Diesel 10's lackeys found us. And they captured us. They moved us to the ironworks, which at this point was clear of explosives, because Edward, Henry, Gordon, and James were gone. And they tipped the smelting pot over. They then propped it up with a piece of wood sitting inside of Scruffy. Essentially, if we moved, we'd be covered in molten steel. However, they soon caught wind of what was going on at Farquhar and took off as fast as they could. And so there Scruffy and I sat, hopeless, helpless. There was nothing we could do for the fight. The Diesels had even chained our couplings so tightly together that not even my crew could uncouple it. If I moved, we would both be melted under molten steel. Just thinking about it makes me... Paxton began to quiver. Percy whispered to Sonny. He must feel awful. I know, said Sonny. I don't know why you're so upset, Paxton, said James. You got to sit in the ironworks while we all faced off Diesel 10, explosives, and a massive explosion at Farquhar Sheds. If anything, you got off lucky. I beg your pardon, James, said Paxton. How about we just let Paxton continue the story, said Emily. I got off lucky, said Paxton. I had to sit in that ironworks knowing that if I moved, both Scruffy and I would die, worrying about whether or not you all were alive. I couldn't even be at your side because of my incompetence. I couldn't be there during the explosion or to help with the evacuation or anything because I was too incompetent to help out. And because of it, I had to sit in the ironworks and fear that my best friend now would die. And that all you might die. You think I got off lucky? James now realized that he had messed up. Paxton, I didn't mean that. You have no idea what it's like to know that your friends are in pain and suffering, but that you can't do anything because you're too incompetent. So shut up. Shut up, James. Just shut up. While you may be gullible at times, began Gordon, I would never call you an incompetent engine, said Gordon. Not an incompetent engine? Diesel ran by me telling me a signal was green, so I backed up and knocked him off the rails, and then he died. How do you not call that incompetent? Paxton, you make mistakes just like the rest of us, but the reason you couldn't help wasn't because of you being gullible or incompetent. I have a hard time believing any of those sentiments are even true. Thanks to me, Diesel got blown up by explosives. If I had just taken those explosives, he wouldn't have been blown up. If I hadn't backed up, he wouldn't have died. Again, Paxton. We all make mistakes, but you're not a stupid engine, and all the reasons that you couldn't help or things went wrong weren't your fault. If anything, that was helping. Diesel made a sacrifice that single-handedly saved the island. You were a part of that. As for him getting blown up by the explosives the first time, well, that was his own doing. But I still couldn't stop him. Again, Paxton, we all make mistakes. Well, I don't know about you all, said Henrietta, but I would like to hear the end of Paxton's story. To be completely honest, I wouldn't mind hearing the end of it either, said Sonny. Same here, puffed Percy. All right, said Paxton, all right. Scruffy and I were in the ironworks for at least an hour. We even heard the Farquhar explosion go off. And eventually, salvation came. Or at least we thought it did. We looked, and we saw the Fat Controller's New Pacific, I think Rebecca was her name, hurrying down the line, probably looking for her friends or something. We thought she had come to help us, but that just wasn't the case. She came barreling in, and... Right away she apologized, and I honestly couldn't be angry. She told us that she had a wheel slip issue, so traction wasn't exactly her strong suit. However, Scruffy and I were heavily damaged. So after that, I was sent to the works to be fixed up, and it was merciless, to say the least. Every moment of captivity in that dark place took me back to that moment when I couldn't leave, couldn't help, couldn't do anything. It was like every moment the pain kept coming back. Emily then puffed onto the turntable. It's all right, Paxton. Emily went to console Paxton. However, a bit of bad coal would play against her, as it sprayed up and went into Paxton's eyes. No!
Guys, I'm coming! I'm sorry, I'm stuck in here! I'm so sorry, I'm so hopeless! I hope you're not dead! I hope you're not dead now! No! No.